On this Saturday night, evacuation alert. Tens of thousands of people in BC are told to get ready to run as unrelenting wildfires grow and devour entire communities. But some are refusing to budge. Canada's Golden Games. Canadian Olympians cap off a record run in Tokyo. So who will be tapped to carry Canada's flag at the closing ceremonies? A mandate to vaccinate.
This has become a very political and emotional debate.
A growing list of Canadian businesses are requiring workers to receive a COVID-19 vaccine. But without government legislation, companies could be left in legal limbo. And long in the tooth, how a 6-year-old girl in Alberta made a 25,000-year-old discovery.
Global National with Robin Gill. Reporting tonight, Jeff Semple.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. We begin tonight in British Columbia's interior, where tens of thousands are now on evacuation alert. A massive wildfire is raging in the central Okanagan, burning perilously close to several towns and cities. That fire is estimated at 55,000 hectares, you see there in dark red, and the surrounding area has already been evacuated, nearly 1,000 properties. Residents in the huge swath of land you can see there in yellow are now being told to be ready to leave at a moment's notice, including around 40,000 residents in the city of Vernon. That fire has been burning for about 3 weeks, but has grown significantly just over the past few days. Some residents say more should have been done to fight the fire before it surged out of control. Emad Agahi is in Kamloops for us tonight with our top story. Emad.
Well, we are entering the peak of the BC wildfire season, and this particular White Rock Lake fire burning between Kamloops and Vernon is the largest. It has grown 100 square kilometers since Friday morning and now sits at 55,000 hectares. And over the last 72 hours, it has jumped its way to the top of the priority list of more than 300 active wildfires in BC. And although thousands of people in smaller communities have had to leave their homes, there are now evacuation alerts for larger cities like Vernon, Armstrong, Chase, and even properties in the eastern part of Kamloops. Well, this blaze became a big problem Thursday when it jumped a highway and swallowed up the community of Monty Lake. It has caused devastation, destruction, damaging buildings and burning cars. From there, it has been moving northeast, forcing evacuation orders in smaller communities in its path. Many leaving with just a shirt on their backs and their pets and finding their way to evacuation centers set up in cities like Kamloops. And those same evacuees and many who are on order to leave are frustrated that the fire has not been contained yet.
They kind of left us stranded. I mean, they say that they're doing a whole bunch, but realistically, they haven't. This fire started and it was 10 hectares, grew to 300, and even the local loggers, they were trying to get cats up there and put it out, and the government and the forest ministry said, no, don't let it burn. And that's part of the problem.
We live out in the country, so if we see a fire, we're not going to wait for the forestry to put it out, we're going to do it ourselves. But no, not there. You can't do that, because this is the results of politicians talking.
Now, as the size of the White Rock Lake fire grows, so does the response from the BC Wildfire Service. Currently, there are 13 helicopters fighting this fire, 38 pieces of heavy equipment. There are hundreds of fire crews and an incident management team on site. And as we mentioned, the conditions that have played a large part in the explosion of the fire size, well, there's no relief really in sight in terms of rain ahead. And although it is cooler and cloudy today, the Wildfire Service is expecting hot, dry conditions to come back as early as Monday and stay within the next couple of weeks as well. Jeff.
Stay safe. Thanks, Emad. And wildfires are also triggering mass evacuations in Greece. This dramatic footage was taken overnight from the island of Evija. Ferries plucked about 1,400 people from beaches as flames closed in. Dozens of fires are now burning across the country. One volunteer firefighter has died. Scores of homes, businesses, and farms have been destroyed. And more wildfires are also threatening thousands of homes in Northern California. The so-called Dixie Fire is the biggest blaze burning in the U.S., and it's now the third largest in California history. It's already destroyed more than 250 homes, and it's threatening more than 10,000 other buildings. Police say 8 people are missing. The Dixie Fire has burned over 180,000 hectares, and it's only about 20% contained. Well, to the Olympics now, and we have some breaking news to bring to you. Team Canada has just revealed its flag bearer. The Canadian Olympian chosen to represent the country at Sunday's closing ceremonies is, drumroll, Damian Warner. The 31-year-old from London, Ontario, was crowned the world's best all-around athlete. Warner captured Canada's first-ever gold medal in the grueling decathlon, finishing with an Olympic record-setting score in one of the game's oldest and most storied events.
It is an honor of my lifetime to be named as the flag bearer for the closing ceremonies at these games. I've watched these games and I've followed these athletes for so long, and I understand that this honor could have went to anybody on this team. There's so many great performances over these games.
Congratulations, Damien. Meanwhile, Team Canada continued its winning ways on the water. Laurence Vincent Lapointe and Katie Vincent earned a bronze in the first ever women's C2 500-meter canoe race today. The Olympians ended up in the water after accidentally tipping the canoe while sharing a post-race hug. Until this year, canoe had been an exclusively male Olympic sport. Now that win brings Canada's medal haul to 23, Team Canada's best ever performance at a non-boycotted Summer Games. China still leads the pack with 38 gold medals, but the U.S. has the most medals overall with 108. Canada is sitting in 14th place. Olympic organizers, meanwhile, are reporting 22 new cases of COVID-19 connected to the Games. Officials say 16 of those are among residents of Japan, while the rest are foreigners. Now that brings the number of total COVID-19 cases related to the Games to 404. Infections in Tokyo have surged over the last few weeks, but the Olympics' chief COVID-19 expert says there is no evidence of any spread between the Olympic bubble and the broader Japanese population. The easing of pandemic restrictions in many parts of this country is fueling debate about mandatory vaccinations. Several Canadian post-secondary institutions are now moving forward with plans to ensure that students and staff are vaccinated before the start of the school year. And this week, the Prime Minister weighed in on the growing debate. Sean O'Shea has the details.
With Canada bracing for a possible fourth wave of COVID-19 cases, it's the subject now confronting businesses and governments head on.
In the last week, this has become a very political and emotional debate.
Whether to require individuals to prove they've been vaccinated, either as a condition of, say, dining at a restaurant or going to their job.
If this is what the majority wants, so we should go for it.
But popular opinion aside, the idea of requiring someone to be vaccinated is tricky.
Employers who think that, well, of course I can do this, it's the right thing to do, I think are going to find themselves on the other side of a wrongful dismissal claim.
South of the border, many companies already require workers to be vaccinated. CNN just fired 3 employees for showing up at work without getting their shots. United Airlines has mandated all its U.S.-based employees to be vaccinated by late October or risk being terminated. The Prime Minister says the government is mulling the question for at least one group.
To look at mandatory vaccinations for federal employees.
But provinces like Ontario and Alberta have rejected the idea of making vaccinations compulsory.
If we reach the point where you have to show a vaccine passport to have a glass of wine on an outdoor patio, but not to be a kindergarten teacher, like, how much sense does that make?
Still, Carleton University just announced students living in residence or playing varsity sports need to prove they're vaccinated. Seneca College in Toronto went farther. It will require all staff and students to be vaccinated if they want to set foot on campus.
We can't force people to get vaccinated, but if we take away activities such as indoor dining, gyms, sporting events, because that's the responsible thing to do, then that may be the way to get more people vaccinated.
And a patchwork of policies doesn't work, says this lawyer.
You can imagine a scenario where you have a building where you have a bank on the 6th floor and, for example, a software company on the 7th floor, and the banking employees must be vaccinated, and the software company has no ability to mandate vaccination.
The only answer, he says, clear direction from governments, either that vaccinations are required or not. Sean O'Shea, Global News, Toronto.
And the pandemic has also prompted a rethink over how we work. Besides the countless employees who've been working from home, governments around the world are also exploring plans to reduce the standard work week. Pilot programs have found that 4-day work weeks can actually boost productivity. And Gaviola has more on the calls to reconsider the 9 to 5.
In 1926, Henry Ford, the man at the helm of the Ford Motor Company, instituted the weekend, shutting down factories on Saturday and Sunday, requiring employees to work 5 days a week from Monday to Friday. Other companies and countries followed suit.
Work is a very different thing than it was in the 20th century. And so I don't think the 5-day work week serves us very well.
The David Suzuki Foundation implemented 4-day work weeks in the 1990s. Staff say it makes for happier, more creative and productive employees who have more time to spend with family, pursue hobbies, and even volunteer in the community.
Well, I work Monday to Thursday, and on Fridays, I spend some time volunteering at Canadian Blood Services. I wouldn't be able to do that if I were working 5 days a week.
Findings from the largest study of the 4-day work week in the world, conducted in Iceland over 4 years, were released in July. The researchers' conclusions were overwhelmingly positive, and 85% of workers in Iceland are either on a 4-day work schedule or heading down that path. In the U.S., legislation was introduced last week to shorten the standard work week. Put forward by Democrat Mark Takano from Southern California, he tweeted that the nature of work is rapidly changing. We must keep up. Economist Linda Nazareth says the reduction of traffic and pollution associated with a 20% reduction in commutes can be a major driver of the 4-day workweek movement.
I think the environment and climate change is something that's going to be factored into work a lot more in the next 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. And that may mean we go to a 4-day work week.
But in a tight labor market, the onus will be on employees to push for it.
We have this mindset that you have to be on or available all the time, particularly if you're anything but a very junior worker. And it is going to be a really hard sell, I think, to see this widely adopted.
Compressed work weeks have been trialed and scrapped over the decades. In the 80s, as a response to soaring prices at the pumps, and abandoned as gas prices came down and productivity dropped. But time will tell if the pandemic will be the catalyst that begins a long-term shift in how and how often we work. Anne Gaviola, Global News, Toronto.
A tentative agreement has been reached to keep border workers on the job. The 4-year deal follows 36 hours of mediated talks after more than 9,000 border services workers staged a Work to Rule campaign yesterday. It stalled traffic at some of Canada's busiest international crossings. Employees haven't had a contract in 3 years. The deal between Ottawa and the union was reached just before the restrictions at the Canada-US border are set to ease on Monday. That will allow fully vaccinated Americans their first chance to cross into Canada for pleasure trips since the pandemic began in March of last year. Still ahead, impending impeachment, the mounting political pressure for New York's governor to resign. Welcome back. Political pressure is building for New York's governor, Andrew Cuomo, to resign. A damning report alleges Cuomo sexually assaulted former staff members and fostered a negative work environment. Now, the first criminal complaint has been brought forward by one of those accusers and could result in charges. Reggie Cicchini reports.
To have been assaulted by the governor. She's one of 11 who have come forward with allegations. A report from the state's attorney general last week laid bare what it said were undeniable facts of a hostile workplace. This is the first criminal complaint to be filed.
I commend them on their bravery for coming forward, and now it's time for us to begin our investigation.
The governor's legal team pounced on the initial report, claiming a predetermined narrative, painting the governor as the victim while hitting back at the independent investigators as being politically driven.
The governor deserves to be treated fairly, and he must be. That did not happen here.
How we doing, gents? If this charge is proven true, the governor could face arrest and a misdemeanor charge, and it's more reason why his party is widening the gap.
Are you now calling on him to resign?
Yes. He's lost the support from key Democrats in Washington and in his own backyard.
We are considering developing articles of impeachment of Governor Cuomo.
Cuomo's lawyers intend to provide evidence by next week in his defense to stave off political elimination. But with a job approval rating below 30%, Cuomo's on borrowed time. Impeachment is backed by a majority of state lawmakers, and as more investigations into his behavior open up...
This is obviously a very high-profile investigation. There's a lot of information out there.
His political future is on the line, with few people coming to his defense.
Democrats have been quick to cut ties with scandal-plagued lawmakers, in sharp contrast to Republicans who still stand by a twice-impeached former president. If Cuomo can run through the headwinds of his own impeachment, it's unclear if he could even seek a fourth term in 2022, given the lack of support and any outcomes of current or former investigations. Jeff?
Reggie Cicchini in Washington. Thanks, Reggie. Still ahead, calls for accountability in Beirut, 1 year after the deadly port blast.
You're watching Global National.
Welcome back. This week, people in Beirut marked 1 year since that huge ammonium nitrate explosion killed 200 people, causing devastating damage in the Lebanese capital. People there are angry that no senior official has been held accountable, and they're also desperate for something to be done about the country's deep economic crisis and political dysfunction. Redmond Shannon reports.
The new memorial for the Beirut blast is made from the debris of the explosion. Many Lebanese say, for now, justice for the victims and political reform are more important than sculptures.
The killers have complete impunity of their crime and with already pretending that something is past.
On the anniversary, that frustration was visible on the streets of Beirut. And from French President Emmanuel Macron, who demanded fundamental change as he chaired a Lebanon aid conference to help those most in need.
I can tell you that children, for example, now replace staples such as cheese and egg with only water and time. And families and parents tell me this.
The economic crisis began a year before the blast. Medicines and fuel are scarce, electricity intermittent.
We are looking at a crisis where the very survival of children is now at stake. And I'm sorry, by the way, I'm sweating because I have no electricity and it's 32 degrees here.
Economists say the collapse of the currency is a result of decades of mismanagement by lawmakers.
So you import a lot, but you are subsidizing. And we as Lebanese, we were living above our means. You need a new mentality, new people who will protect the public resources, who will manage the resources efficiently.
Parties have struggled to agree on a new government, even amid the crisis. This is partly because the unique political system sees key roles shared among religious groups. Sectarian violence this week has highlighted deep divides that persist.
We used to talk about failed states. You know, we're past failed states. You know, this is like stateless. Somebody mentioned today something like state capture.
The political and social influence of Iran is seen by many as the most insurmountable barrier to change. Some see only one solution for themselves.
You know, definitely anybody who had another citizenship has already left because this is their passport to leave.
Hope, along with food and electricity, remain in short supply in Lebanon. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
She's been dubbed the Fossil Fairy. Next, meet the little girl who just gave a big gift to paleontologists in Alberta. Welcome back. Alberta is home to 587 animal species, and for a long time that list has not included camels. The desert dwellers haven't roamed North America since the last ice age, but newly unearthed evidence is now shedding light on their prehistoric life. And as Sarah Ryan explains, it's all thanks to a 6-year-old girl.
6-year-old Abby Darby will never forget this particular beach day.
On the beach sand, I thought I saw a cool rock, but then I digged it out, and it wasn't a rock.
Instead of throwing it back into Jackfish Lake, she ran to show her family the unusual find.
I thought after that it would be really cool if I could tell her exactly what it was, because we all had our guesses.
Grandma, she had a claw, guess, but all the other ones think that it was a tooth.
Abby's aunt sent a video of the fossil to the University of Alberta.
It's definitely a tooth. You can see it right away, and it's definitely mammal because it has the multiple roots. A lot of what we see in dinosaurs or lizards or other animals is a single root.
PhD student Mark Powers looked carefully at the tooth cusps and pits.
Upon looking at some specimens here at the University of Alberta in our teaching collections, I can confirm it's definitely a camel family member.
That's right, a camel in Alberta. Powers says fossil records indicate camels originated here in North America. Abby was thrilled by the news.
I think that it was amazing.
The university estimates the tooth to be between 22 and 25,000 years old.
There was huge glaciers that were covering most of Alberta during that time, so there would have been some ravines where the ice sheets were retreating away from each other, where we would get a lot of water influence from the melting glaciers, and that's where animals probably would have hung out.
Powers said by analyzing the fossilized tooth's isotopes, researchers could learn a lot about how long the animal lived, what it ate, and how it migrated. Abby's family plans to donate the specimen to the Royal Alberta Museum.
So when next year I'm in grade 1, I can show my friends. They would think it was very, very cool.
Sarah Ryan, Global News.
Very cool. And that is Global National for this Saturday night. I'm Jeff Semple. Tonight, your candidate is Tiverton, Nova Scotia. Please keep sending us your photos to viewers@globalnational.com. Thanks for watching. I'll see you back here tomorrow. Have a great night.